It was supposed to be just another night in Las Vegas. 20,000 fans packed into the Las Vegas Hilton, the energy electric as Elvis Presley commanded the stage in his iconic white jumpsuit. The date was November 14th, 1976, and nobody in that arena knew they were about to witness something that would be talked about for decades to come. Elvis had just finished an explosive rendition of Burning Love. The crowd was on their feet, feeding him energy, and he was giving it right back. But then, cutting through the music like a blade, came a voice that nobody expected. "Elvis, you ain't nothing but a fake." The music stopped. The band members looked at each other in confusion. 20,000 heads turned toward the middle section where a man stood swaying, clearly intoxicated, pointing aggressively toward the stage. This was Bobby Henderson, though everyone called him Big Mike. A construction worker from Phoenix who'd spent his afternoon drinking at the hotel bar, building up the courage to do something he'd been planning all day. Big Mike wasn't there to enjoy the show. He was there to prove a point. In his alcohol-clouded mind, he'd convinced himself that celebrities like Elvis were soft, fake, undeserving of their fame, and he wanted to expose that in front of thousands. Elvis's first move was classic showmanship. He tried humor. "Well, hello there, friend," he said with that famous Southern charm. "Looks like we got ourselves a music critic in the house tonight." The audience laughed nervously, expecting this would end with security escorting the drunk man out. That's how these things usually went. But Big Mike wasn't backing down. "Don't you friend me, boy. I'm talking to you. You think you're so tough with your fancy clothes and your singing? Why don't you come down here and prove you're a real man?" The atmosphere shifted instantly. This wasn't just heckling anymore. This was a direct challenge. Security guards started moving toward Mike's section, but Elvis raised his hand to stop them. He stood there for a moment studying this drunk man who was ruining what had been a perfect evening. What happened next shocked everyone in that arena, including Elvis's own band. Instead of having security remove the troublemaker, instead of ignoring him and continuing the show, Elvis set down his microphone and started walking toward the edge of the stage. "You want to know if I'm a real man?" Elvis's voice carried clearly through the sound system. "You think I'm just some pretty boy who can't handle himself?" The arena went dead silent. "Well, friend, I tell you what. Why don't you come up here and we'll settle this like gentlemen?" The crowd erupted. Some cheered, others screamed, "Don't do it, Elvis!" Backstage, Colonel Parker was reportedly losing his mind, but Elvis wasn't finished. "Come on up here," he gestured. "You want to prove something? Let's prove it. But we're not going to fight like animals. We're going to settle this the way real men settle things." Big Mike, emboldened by alcohol and attention, started pushing toward the stage. Security tried to intercept him, but Elvis waved them off. "Let him come." When Mike finally stumbled onto the stage, the two men faced each other. Elvis, calm and controlled in his white jumpsuit. Mike, sweaty and aggressive, clearly drunk but still confrontational. The entire arena was on its feet, unsure whether they were about to witness a fight or something else entirely. "All right, friend," Elvis said, close enough now that his voice carried through his microphone. "You want to prove who's the real man here? I got a proposition for you." "Bring it on," Mike slurred. "Here's what we're going to do," Elvis said, his voice taking on that smooth, confident tone that had charmed millions. "We're going to have ourselves a singing contest. You and me, right here. Right now. Winner takes all." The suggestion was so unexpected that it took the crowd a moment to process. A singing contest? This drunk heckler versus Elvis Presley? Then someone started laughing. Then another. Within seconds, the entire arena filled with laughter and applause. The tension that had been building toward violence suddenly transformed into anticipation for something completely different. Big Mike wasn't amused. "I don't want to sing with you. I want to fight you." "Well, that's too bad," Elvis said, grinning now, "because this is my stage. These are my people, and we do things my way here. You want to prove you're tougher than me? Then prove you can do what I do. Sing." Elvis gestured to his guitarist. "Give the man a microphone." The band, still in shock but following Elvis's lead, prepared to play. Big Mike suddenly found himself holding a microphone, the center of attention in a way he hadn't expected. "What do you want me to sing?" he asked, his aggressive tone replaced with uncertainty. "Whatever you want, friend." This is your moment. 20,000 people are waiting to hear what you've got to say." What followed was both hilarious and strangely touching. Big Mike attempted to sing "My Way," apparently the only song he could think of in his foggy state. His performance was predictably terrible, off-key, forgetting half the words, swaying so much he nearly fell over. But here's where the remarkable part happened. Instead of the audience booing or mocking him, something else occurred. As Mike struggled through the song, clearly embarrassed and vulnerable, the crowd began cheering him on. "You got this! Keep going!" Elvis stood beside him, clapping along, encouraging him. When Mike forgot lyrics, Elvis whispered them. When he started to give up, Elvis put his arm around his shoulders and kept him going. By the time Big Mike finished his stumbling version of the song, something had fundamentally changed in that room. This angry, belligerent drunk who'd come to cause trouble had become, for a few minutes, just another person trying his best at something difficult. The audience gave him a standing ovation. Not because he sang well, but because he tried. And because Elvis had created a space where even a hostile heckler could be transformed into someone worth cheering for. "That was beautiful, Mike," Elvis said, and he seemed to genuinely mean it. "That took real courage." Big Mike, now clearly emotional and no longer aggressive, looked around in wonder. "I can't believe they're clapping for me." "Of course they are," Elvis said. "You just did something brave. You got up here and tried something new in front of 20,000 people. That's more than most folks ever do." Then Elvis did something that revealed his true character. Instead of showing off with one of his big hits, instead of demonstrating the vast difference in talent between himself and the heckler, he chose to sing a simple gospel song. He invited Mike to join him, giving him harmony parts, making him feel like a true part of the performance. The two men stood together, the king of rock and roll and a drunk construction worker from Phoenix, singing while 20,000 people joined in. When the song ended, Elvis turned to Mike with genuine warmth. "Mike, I want to ask you something. What made you so angry tonight? What's really bothering you?" The question, asked with such sincere concern, seemed to break something open in Big Mike. In front of 20,000 people, this tough construction worker started to cry. "I lost my job last month," Mike said into the microphone, his voice shaking. "My wife left me. I just wanted someone to pay attention to me. I wanted to matter." The arena went completely silent. Elvis put his arm around Mike's shoulders. "Brother, you matter. You matter to me, and you matter to every person in this room. We all have times when we feel lost and angry, but you don't have to tear other people down to build yourself up." What Elvis did next became Vegas legend. He announced to the audience that he would personally help Mike find a job in Las Vegas. If anyone in the audience owned a construction company and needed a hard worker, they should talk to his people after the show. "That's what we do for each other," Elvis said. "We don't tear down, we build up." Big Mike stayed for the rest of the concert, sitting on the side of the stage, occasionally joining in when Elvis invited him. By the end of the night, he'd gone from being the show's biggest disruption to being part of its most memorable moments. 3 construction company owners approached Elvis's management after the show with job offers for Mike. He accepted one, moved to Las Vegas, and worked there for the next 15 years until his retirement. But the impact of that night went far beyond one man's job. The story spread throughout Las Vegas and beyond, becoming a legendary example of how to handle conflict with grace, wisdom, and compassion. Other performers started talking about Elvis's approach. Comedian Don Rickles later said, "Elvis showed us that every heckler is just a human being having a bad day. He turned an enemy into a friend in front of 20,000 people. That's not just good showmanship, that's good humanity." For Elvis, the incident reinforced his belief that his role as a performer was about more than entertainment. He later told a friend, "I realized that night that I have a responsibility. When someone comes to my show, whether they're a fan or a heckler, I have an opportunity to make their life a little better." The entire incident was captured on bootleg recordings that have become treasured documents among Elvis collectors. But it's not just the music that people value. It's Elvis's handling of the confrontation, his wisdom, and his compassion. The story became a parable about handling conflict in any situation. Instead of meeting aggression with aggression, Elvis chose curiosity, compassion, and creativity. He turned a potential fight into a teaching moment, a hostile confrontation into a healing experience, and an enemy into a friend. Civil rights leader Jesse Jackson later cited the incident in speeches about nonviolent conflict resolution, saying, "Elvis proved that night that you don't defeat your enemies by fighting them. You defeat them by loving them until they become your friends." Today, the story is taught in conflict resolution courses and cited by therapists as an example of how to de-escalate tense situations through empathy and understanding. Big Mike Henderson, before his death in 2003, gave several interviews about that night. In each one, he credited Elvis with saving his life by showing him better ways to deal with pain than lashing out at others. "Elvis could have humiliated me in front of all those people," Mike said in his final interview. "Instead, he helped me find my dignity. He turned the worst night of my life into the beginning of a better life." The confrontation between Elvis and Big Mike Henderson reminds us that behind every act of aggression is usually a person in pain. And it shows us that the strongest response to hostility isn't more hostility. It's understanding, compassion, and the willingness to see the humanity in everyone. Elvis could have had Mike thrown out. He could have made jokes at his expense. He could have used his power and position to humiliate him. Instead, he chose to help him, to heal him, and to show 20,000 people what real strength looks like. Nearly 50 years later, people still talk about the night Elvis turned a heckler into a friend. It wasn't just great entertainment, it was great humanity. And in a world that often seems divided by anger and misunderstanding, that's exactly the kind of story we need to remember.